Welcome to Jedburgh. This is the fourth and final part in this series following the four abbeys in the Scottish borders. If you haven't watched the three before this, that's Melrose, Dryburgh and Kelso, I'd recommend you go and do that. It's always good for me to get some views, you know. Now, Jedburgh has been a religious site since at least the 9th century, if not earlier, and it's been known by many names as well. I think I read somewhere that there's like 83 names for Jedburgh or something. The most common other one is Jethart, often just gets called Jed. Obviously, the big draw for Jedburgh is the magnificent abbey, managed by Historic Scotland and thankfully dog friendly, so I've brought Molly along with me again to see what stories she can sniff out. Now, like the other three abbeys in the borders, Jedburgh was founded in the 1100s by King David, one of my favourite kings of Scots, and he did a lot to shape the Scotland that we know today. David was a powerful ruler, and he had good relations with our southern neighbours, so building rich yet vulnerable abbeys so close to the border was just a big statement that he could be confident in. Now, you only have to look at the soaring remains of Jedburgh to see how wealthy this place once was. It played an important part in history, none quite as grand as the second wedding of King Alexander III. It was grand, but it didn't end well, so I think it's time for a story. Now, this is a story that just happens to be in the Scotland Stories book, and again, I didn't bring one with me, so I'm going to jump now to Story Corner and read it for you, and I'll put a link in the wee caption of the video so that you can grab yourself a copy of the book as well. It's stories from behind places all around Scotland, from Shetland to Dumfries and Galloway. Now, you'll have noticed this is not Story Corner, but while I hoped that I was going to have time to do this in my proper chair, I ran out of time, and now I'm on a tour, and I'm actually in a hostel in Glencoe, sitting to doing this, but I've got a book. I've got the Scotland Stories book, and I'm going to tell you the story, so just forgive my surroundings, and hopefully it's not too echoey. This is about the ghost that danced at Jedburgh Abbey. Now, the King, Alexander III, married his second wife, Yolande de Dieu, here in 1285, and initially it was a joyous celebration. Alexander was especially pleased as he had no surviving children and was desperate to secure an heir with his new wife. Then the mood changed halfway through the after-party when a strange figure appeared in the hall. The dancing stopped, the music faded away as a spectral skeleton moved towards the happy couple. This horrific wedding crasher didn't say a word, it just slowly raised a finger and pointed towards the king. Everybody agreed this was a terrible omen for a royal wedding night, but nobody could have imagined truly what it meant. Just a year later, Alexander was killed falling from his horse at Kinghorn while trying to reach Yolande on a stormy night. He died without that heir he craved, and Scotland was soon plunged into the succession crisis that led to the Wars of Independence. The arches, there's some fantastic arches in Jedburgh. More than a few. It's hard to imagine. I don't think it is actually hard to imagine in Jedburgh just how grand this was. I mean, look at it. Even in ruins, it's a pretty spectacular place. So, Alexander III dies, plunges Scotland into the succession crisis, but that is not the only disaster to befall Jedburgh Abbey. Now, King David might have considered himself safe from English attacks and powerful enough, but the future kings of Scots weren't quite so lucky. Jedburgh was burned to the ground again and again. Each time it was rebuilt just a wee bit grander than before, and then eventually it was the Protestant Reformation in 1560 where there was no need for big ecclesiastical buildings like this, and it slowly fell into ruin. Even in the ruins, the Abbey is spectacular. Probably the most impressive, in my opinion anyway, of the four sites, physically anyway. The best part is they're all dog friendly. Now, Jedburgh Abbey, it might not be used as a monastery anymore, but it became a place for burials, and some of the most impressive are just in here, in the Kerr Vault Crypt. Not sure exactly what it's called. I was completely wrong. It's called the Lothian Isle, which is a bit more boring.
The Kerrs of Ferniehurst were a very prominent Borders family, and for generations they had been butting heads with the Scots. The Scott family, that is, not just Scottish people. But Thomas Kerr brought that chapter to a close by marrying Jean Scott in the mid-1500s. Now, I didn't actually know this until recently, but not all of these Kerrs are buried here. They were just prominent enough locally to get these memorials inside the Abbey grounds.
At one time there would have been an effigy here, I imagine. There was this carved stone instead. This is the Marquess of Lothian. These always creep me out, they're very lifelike. Now you can actually see the difference in architecture here. These rounded arches, more common in the 12th century, so probably original from the earliest part of the Abbey, and above it, pointed arches. The pointed arches are from slightly later on, I forget the century, but hopefully you'll forgive me. And also, some of this stone, with this really red, reminds me, and I'm not saying this is what it is, I'm just saying it reminds me of Elgin Cathedral, where they've got huge patches of red marked stone from the fires that blazed when it was burned down by the Wolf of Badenoch. And we know Jedburgh was burned down many times, so could be a remnant of that. Now obviously we're leaving the sort of sacred church section of the Abbey behind back there, and I'm now down into the kind of living quarters, eating quarters, the kitchen down there. Now all in all, I don't think the life of a monk was all that bad, somebody living in one of these abbeys. The hardest part, food. During meal times, the brothers had to be quiet, they had to just listen while one of them read from a religious text. They were mostly vegetarian, eggs, milk, honey, that kind of stuff. They were allowed to eat fish from time to time, but red meat, no red meat at all. Until later on, things began to get a little bit more lax. And they were allowed to eat some of these things on special days, and it was paid for by benefactors. Basically people more or less trying to buy their way into heaven a bit quicker. Now this is a little drain. And this is the Great Drain. Now, there's a lot more history around Jedburgh than just the Abbey though, so let's get going.
It's a bustling wee place, packed full of history wherever you turn.
Now, of course, there's a Robert Burns connection, because just about every town in Scotland has a Robert Burns connection. Now this is Jedburgh Jail. Well, no, actually it used to be a jail. Well, Actually, it used to be a castle. Let me start again. This is Jedburgh Castle Jail, and it stands where Jedburgh Castle used to, up on this little mound not too far from where the Abbey is. It was fought over fiercely in the Wars of Independence, so in the 13th and 14th centuries, until eventually it was destroyed in 1409. And it wasn't until the 1800s that this state-of-the-art prison was built to take over from the small one down in the centre of town now. And even after all that time, 400 years later, it was still built to look like a fortress. It was said to be the most comfortable jail in Scotland, and Molly's in the car, so I am not going to go inside, but you can. It's a visitor attraction now, so you can go and see for yourself what it was like as a prisoner in the 1800s. But there's also one still very important part that Jedburgh Castle Jail plays in, well, maybe not everyday life in Jedburgh, but a local tradition known as the ball game. Now, the ball game starts here at the Market Cross the first Thursday after Shrove Tuesday, where two teams will battle it out over a wee leather ball. Teams are split into uppies and doonies depending on where you live. The doonies trying to get the ball across a burn, and the uppies trying to throw it against a wall of the castle jail. It's been going on for over 300 years, and there are practically no rules or playing field. Hordes of locals will fight it out right across the town, with shops boarding up their windows to try and keep them safe. One year I promise I'll come and see it. I just have to make sure I don't get trampled in the process.
If there's one thing in Jedburgh other than the Abbey that you shouldn't miss, this is it. The Mary Queen of Scots house wasn't actually ever home to the famous Scottish Queen, but she did stay here during one of the most dramatic periods of her life, and inside you'll find a great wee museum dedicated to her. In October 1566, Mary was visiting Jedburgh on royal business when she discovered that Earl of Bothwell had been injured fighting reivers and was near death at Hermitage Castle. That's around 25 miles away, and the Queen rode cross-country to see her loyal supporter, only spending a couple of hours there before racing back to this house. On that return journey, Mary fell badly ill, and now it looked like she was the one at death's door. Thankfully she did recover, but this hazardous journey to be at Bothwell's side would later become ammunition for Mary's enemies that she was having an affair. That's a story for another time, featuring these two characters found in the Rogues Gallery. Now the next thing is a bit weird. It's the death mask of Mary Queen of Scots herself. Now, making a mask from the cast of a dead person's face wasn't that unusual back then, but I've never seen one painted like this before. Beautiful, but very, very creepy. Time to get out of here before she opens her eyes.
Now, this is very easily missed. That's Mary Queen of Scots' house there. This sits in the garden, and it looks like just a weird rock, big stone, some holes in it. This is actually the base of what was probably an 8th century Christian cross used for preachers, open air services. That's what the theory is. So that makes this about 1300 years old. Obviously, it's missing quite a chunk nowadays. And it was probably disused after the Reformation in the middle of the 1500s. That's my guess, anyway. You can still make out some of the carvings. On it. And it was basically rediscovered and used
being used as a turnpike. That's what the holes and the things, the divots in it are for. Amazingly, it just goes to show, is that sacrilege, or is it ingenuity, or just recycling? She's been struggling with her legs, so she's gone back to the car, but I'm going to bring her a wee treat. Don't worry, make her feel a wee bit better, maybe make me feel a wee bit better as well. Oh, that's 3 o'clock. Yeah, the dog's in the car as well, so you know, nice enough to share. Got Molly's treat for doing so well today. I think it's Molly's treat. It's kind of for both of us. It's deep fried haggis. If you're not sure about haggis, this is a good way of trying some. We'll see how it goes. It's very hot. Oh, haggis. I think that gets Molly's approval, if I'm honest. Thanks very much for watching this to the end, especially if you've watched all 4 of these videos around each of the Borders Abbeys. If you haven't, please consider going back and give them all a watch. And yeah, please leave me a like, a comment to let me know what you thought about the video, or where you would like me to go next, and to show you around, to tell you stories. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future ones. Hopefully, the next video, I'll see you there. Cheers.